Today we're going to talk about the ancient astrology that is present in the Hymn of Christ. So what is the Hymn of Christ? We should provide a little introduction before we jump in to this astrological language. So the Hymn of Christ is a mysterious song that appears in the apocryphal Acts of John. And the Acts of John is a 2nd or 3rd century early Christian text that is about the Apostle John's adventures after Jesus' earthly life. I've made a video about it before on my channel, so if you're interested in that, you can go and check it out. But the Acts of John is a relatively famous text that actually provides much of the tradition that we come to imagine that is associated with John later in the Christian tradition. So in this text, John recalls his memories of Jesus' final days, including the night before his betrayal. The Acts of John seems to be showing the reader the words of the hymn that Christ sang with his disciples during the Last Supper. You may remember that in the Gospels of Mark and Matthew, if I remember correctly, Jesus sings a hymn with the disciples right after he institutes the Eucharist and right before he goes off to be betrayed and killed at the hands of the Romans and the Jews. It says that they sang a hymn, but the Gospels don't say what the song was that they sang. So I think this text is trying to fill in those words. So during this hymn, Jesus reveals deeply theological mysteries about the divine, about himself, about the Father, about numerous things, how to be united with the divine, and that sort of thing. So here's the setting of the hymn that's recorded in the Acts of John. And I'm translating this in a somewhat literalistic fashion from the Greek, so forgive me if the English doesn't seem particularly natural. So it goes like this. Now before he was taken by the lawless Jews, who also got their law from the lawless serpent, gathering all of us together, he said, "Before I am to be handed over to them, let us sing a hymn to the Father, and in this way let us go out to what lies ahead." Then he told us to make a ring, holding each other's hands, but he, being in the middle, was saying, "Answer Amen unto me." And this is Acts of John, section 40. So in this text, I should mention that the Apostle John is the narrator here. So when Jesus says he gathers all of us together, this is John speaking. This is from the perspective of the Apostle John. So when the hymn starts, Jesus, starts out with a doxology to the divine, and then he makes a bunch of paradoxical statements, a bunch of reciprocal statements, this sort of thing. And I don't have time to get into that here, but you can go and look it up if you are interested in this. But about halfway through the hymn, he says 3 lines that are of particular interest to us in this video. So they go like this: Ogdoad mia hemin sumpsale, amen. Hododekatos arithmos ano korewe, amen. Tode holo ano korewen huparke, amen. And I'm taking this from Junod and Kessley's 1983 edition. This is volume 1, page 203. If you're interested, you can go and check that out from your local university library or whoever happens to have it. So here's a literalistic English translation of this, and it goes like this. So 1-8 sings along with us, Amen. The 12th number dances above, Amen. Now it is for the whole above to dance, Amen. And this is the Acts of John 95. So it's halfway through the hymn. So this is clearly, these are astrological terms that are being used here. So we want to find out what the point of this is. So let's start with the first one. We have the Singing Ogdoad. So we can see that the first line began like this. 1-8 sings with us, Amen. And that's just a very literal translation. The 8 is referred to as the Ogdoad, right? In the Greek it's Ogdoas, right? And we usually just transliterate it as the Ogdoad. So what is the Ogdoad? So the Ogdoad is the set of 8 primal deities in ancient Egyptian astrology and mythology. By Jesus' time, people in the Mediterranean world had added it to their own cosmologies. So thousands of years before the time of Christ, the Egyptians came up with this idea that there was one primal God, and then he created a set of 8 helpers, and these helper deities help to fashion the cosmos as it exists. And at some point in the Greco-Roman world, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean world, around the time of Jesus, people were adding this to their own local mythologies. So it's not particularly surprising to see Egyptian terms show up in what is ostensibly a piece of early Christian literature, right? So why is it singing, right? The text says that the number 8 for the Ogdoad sings with the apostles, and then they say, Amen, I agree, truly it is so, or something like that. Why are the apostles doing this? Why is Christ saying this? Well, the idea is that the apostles and Christ sing in order to mimic the singing of the Ogdoad in the heavens, right? So the idea is that there is a level of the heavens, which is the level of the 8, the level of the 8 primal deities. And if you sing along with them, then you can participate with them and in some sense be mystically united with them. So that's sort of the point of this ritual. It's some sort of a mystical initiation or something to that effect. That's what's going on here. And they're trying to participate in the divine life of the Ogdoad. So now let's go to the Dancing Dodecad. We see here that the term is the dodekatos arithmos, right? Just means the 12th number, right? So in English the line would be the 12th number dances above Amen. So what does this mean? Well, as you can imagine, this is related to the term for the 8 or the Ogdoad. So the idea is that the Dodecad or the 12 is the level of the heavens that is below the Ogdoad, and that it is divided into the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's why there are 12 divisions of this level of the heavens, and hence the number 12, right? So the zodiac, as many of you know if you're interested in astrology and that sort of thing, this originated in ancient Babylonian religion and cosmology long before the time of Christ, and it just got co-opted, and it was used in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Greco-Roman world generally. It's just something that people took for granted. This is how the world worked. This is how the cosmos worked. So at some point, again, by the time of Jesus, people had taken the Egyptian Ogdoad and combined it with the Babylonian zodiac. So they put the zodiac at one level, and then they put the Ogdoad at the level above the zodiac, or the number 12, and then on top of that you had the primal deity that created everything. So again, the apostles are dancing in order to imitate the dancing of the zodiac of the level of the heavens, right? So this is happening in order to experience the divine. It's the same idea going on here. So now let's go to the next line. So the third line goes like this. Well, actually, it's kind of hard to translate, but in the Greek, it goes like this: To holo ano koreoen huparke amen. So it's hard to translate, so I'm going to give you 3 options here that different scholars have proposed, specifically James, Dewey, and Bowe. So James renders it like this: The whole on high hath part in our dancing. This is the time-honored translation that everybody knows, anyone who has researched the Acts of John before. So the second translation is like this: Now the all, just the same thing as the whole, belongs to the dancer, or dancing. Now Bowe's translation is this: To the all it belongs to dance in the height. Now as you can see, these translations don't totally agree, and that's because it's part of the issue is that here you have the whole, right here it says, but the whole. This is in the dative case, which means that it would be like an indirect object in the sentence. But you can see that James here translates it as if it is the subject. The whole on high hath part in our dancing. So if you were to make this the subject in the Greek, you might want it to be something like to holon instead of to holo, right? But in any case, James prefers to take it as the subject of the sentence, right? And this is just the word for above. Ano is for above. And koreoen is the infinitive present for to dance, right? Just to dance. And huparke just means it exists, or it is for, or some people have translated as it belongs to. So as you can see, it's a little bit of an ambiguous statement. That's why I wanted to give these 3 possible translations. Now my literalistic translation is something like this: Now it is for the whole above to dance. Amen. So is the whole, or is the fullness, or is the pleroma, as some other literature from the time says, is it dancing, or just the apostles dancing? It's not clear just from this sentence. But obviously, we saw in the previous 2 lines that the Ogdoad and the Dodecad are singing and dancing with the apostles. So there's no reason to think that the whole on high is not dancing with the apostles as well, because the holon, or the whole, is really just the totality of the divine celestial spheres. So in other words, it would be what you would get if you were to put the primal god, the Ogdoad, and the Dodecad together. You would get the whole, or the pleroma, or the fullness, or whatever you want to call it. So this is kind of the idea here. It's the same thing is going on, right? So it's the totality of the cosmos. And ancient Christians or Gnostic Christians used to talk about the totality of the divine that generated the cosmos, and they just used the general Greek term that refers to the whole, right? So the apostles are dancing with the whole in order to imitate it, just like they're imitating the Ogdoad, just like they're imitating the Dodecad. It's to participate in it and have a sort of mystical union with the divine. So, not to draw too many connections here, but it is somewhat similar to the idea of theosis. So, if you're familiar with Eastern Orthodox Christianity, this is the idea that salvation comes from becoming like the divine. The difference here, though, it seems to be that Orthodox Christians thought that this union happened through ethical transformation, but apparently other heterodox Christians, like the people who composed this hymn, might have preferred ecstatic initiation rituals akin to what you see in the Hermetic corpus or in Valentinianism or other forms of very mysterious secret religions in order to get this imitation or proximity to the divine. Okay, so it just depends on how you interpret the text here. So in conclusion, what can we say about the interpretation of these astrological lines in the Hymn of Christ? So we can say that whoever wrote this hymn believed in a version of Christian or Gnostic cosmology and astrology. But in order to get to the divine, the person needed to get up to and past the zodiac and the Ogdoad, that is, past the planets and their deities. So by imitating the singing and dancing of these celestial deities, they could experience union with the totality of the divine in the present. And in some sense, Jesus was central to that experience, and that's why the writers of this text seem to have some kind of a piety toward Jesus. And finally, I leave you with some of the sources that I used to create this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I always welcome comments and criticisms and questions. And I guess I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.